I sat perfectly still in the leather chair at the end of the conference table, watching my brothers celebrate what they thought was my humiliation. The lawyer's office smelled like old books and expensive cologne, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind Mr. Richardson's desk, I could see the Chicago skyline stretching out under a gray November sky. My oldest brother, Marcus, was laughing so hard he had to wipe tears from his eyes. "A coffee mug?" he managed to get out between fits of laughter. "Dad left you his old coffee mug?" Tyler, the middle brother, slapped the mahogany table. "Oh man, this is priceless. We get the properties and the investment accounts, and Logan gets a mug. A freaking ceramic mug." I looked down at the object in my hands. It was heavy, handmade pottery with a deep blue glaze that had tiny cracks running through it like a spider's web. The kind of thing you'd find at a craft fair for $20. My father's initials were carved into the bottom in rough, uneven letters. J. H. "Gentlemen, please," Mr. Richardson said, adjusting his glasses. He was in his 60s, silver-haired, the kind of lawyer who charged $500 an hour just to breathe in your direction. "There are still a few items to review in the will." But Marcus wasn't listening. He stood up, straightening his tailored suit. "Nah, we're done here. Tyler and I have a meeting with the property management company in an hour. Dad left us the apartment building on State Street and the house in Evanston. That's what, $3 million in real estate." 4.2, Tyler corrected, pulling out his phone, plus the stock portfolio, another $2.8 million. They both looked at me, and I could see the pity mixed with contempt in their eyes, the same look they'd given me my whole life. "Hey, at least you can use the mug for coffee," Marcus said, clapping me on the shoulder hard enough to sting. "Maybe think of Dad every time you pour yourself a cup. You know, before you head off to your little teaching job." They left, their designer shoes clicking against the marble floor, their laughter echoing down the hallway until the elevator doors closed. Mr. Richardson cleared his throat. "Mr. Harper, I apologize for your brother's behavior." "It's fine," I said quietly, turning the mug over in my hands. "This is pretty much what I expected." And it was true. My father and I had never been close. Not the way he was with Marcus and Tyler. They were his real sons, the ones who followed him into commercial real estate, who understood profit margins and investment strategies, who wore suits and played golf at the country club. I was the disappointment. The one who got a degree in American literature. The one who taught high school English for $43,000 a year. The one who read poetry and went to art museums and had no interest in making money just for the sake of making money. The one who, apparently, was worth exactly one coffee mug. "Will there be anything else?" I asked, standing up. Mr. Richardson looked at me for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. "Your father," he began, then stopped. "Your father was a complicated man, Mr. Harper. I knew him for 35 years. I handled all of his legal affairs." "I know," I said. "Look, I appreciate you trying to make me feel better, but it's okay. Really, Dad and I never saw eye to eye. This is just his final statement on the matter." I walked out into the cold Chicago afternoon, the mug tucked under my arm, and tried very hard not to feel anything at all. That night, I sat alone in my small apartment in Logan Square, the mug on the kitchen table in front of me. My cat, Hemingway, jumped up and sniffed at it curiously, before losing interest and wandering off to find his food bowl. I picked up the mug and examined it more closely. The glaze was beautiful, really. Deep blue with veins of lighter color running through it. The kind of thing my father never would have noticed or cared about. He was all about function, about value, about return on investment. So why this? Why leave me something handmade and old and seemingly worthless? I turned it over again, looking at the carved initials. J. H. James Harper. My father's name. And then I noticed something I hadn't seen before in the lawyer's office. There was another mark next to the initials. Not a letter, but a number. Or was it coordinates? I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, holding it up to the bottom of the mug. Scratched into the pottery, so faint I almost missed it, were two sets of numbers, 41.8781 and -87.6298. My heart started beating faster. I pulled up my laptop and opened Google Maps, typing in the coordinates. The pin dropped on a location on the north side of Chicago, a warehouse district near the Chicago River. not far from where my father had his first real estate office back in the 80s. I stared at the screen for a long time, questions spinning through my mind. Was this intentional? Did my father leave me a message? Or was I just desperate to find meaning where there was none? There was only one way to find out. The next morning, I called in sick to school and drove across the city. The address led me to an old brick warehouse that had been converted into climate-controlled storage units. The kind of place that charged premium prices for long-term storage. I sat in my Honda Civic in the parking lot for 10 minutes, the mug on the passenger seat next to me, trying to decide if I was being ridiculous. Marcus and Tyler would laugh if they could see me now, chasing after ghosts, looking for hidden treasure like some kind of B-movie plot. But something in my gut told me to go inside. The lobby was small and industrial, with concrete floors and metal filing cabinets. A woman in her 50s sat behind a desk, reading a paperback thriller. "Can I help you?" she asked, looking up. "I hope so," I said, placing the mug carefully on her desk. "My father recently passed away, and I found this with some coordinates on it. They led me here. His name was James Harper." The woman's expression changed immediately. She set down her book and leaned forward, studying the mug, then looking up at me with new interest. "Harper," she repeated slowly. "James Harper. I thought someone would come eventually, but that was 20 years ago, I assumed." She trailed off. "You have ID?" I showed her my driver's license, my hands shaking slightly. She typed something into her computer, then nodded. "Unit 237. Your father's been paying for it since 1987. 37 years. She pulled out a key from a locked drawer. "I'll take you there." We walked through fluorescent-lit corridors, past rows of identical storage units. My mind was racing. 37 years. That was before I was even born. What could my father have been storing here for that long? Unit 237 was at the end of a hallway on the second floor. The woman unlocked it and pulled up the rolling door. Inside was a single metal filing cabinet and a wooden trunk, both covered in a fine layer of dust. "I'll give you some privacy," she said, handing me the key. "Take your time. Lock up when you're done." I stood in the doorway for a moment after she left, just staring. Then I stepped inside and opened the filing cabinet. The top drawer was full of photographs. Old ones, from the 70s and 80s. Faded color prints with that distinctive vintage look. I pulled out a handful and started going through them. My father looked young, maybe 25, with long hair and a beard I'd never seen in any photos at home. He was smiling in ways I'd never seen him smile. And in almost every photo, he was with a woman. She was beautiful, with dark curly hair and bright eyes, wearing the kind of bohemian dresses that were popular back then. On the back of one photo, in my father's handwriting, "Jennifer and me 1976. The day we opened the pottery studio." Pottery studio. I looked down at the mug in my hands, understanding starting to dawn. I kept digging. More photos, the two of them covered in clay laughing, standing in front of a small storefront with a sign that read River Clay Pottery. Working at wheels, their hands shaping wet clay into bowls and vases and mugs. And then the photos changed. Jennifer started appearing less frequently. In the ones where she was present, she looked thinner, tired. There was a gap, and then photos of my father alone, in a suit, standing in front of buildings. The beginning of his real estate career. I moved to the second drawer. It was full of documents. I pulled out the first folder and started reading. Medical bills. From Rush University Medical Center. Jennifer Hoffman. Leukemia treatment. 1985 through 1987. The amounts made my stomach turn. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. And stapled to each bill, a receipt marked PAID in full. There were letters too. From Jennifer, written in shaky handwriting as her illness progressed. Thanking my father for everything. Telling him he didn't have to give up his dreams for her. Telling him she loved him, but he needed to let her go. And my father's responses, typed and formal even in his most emotional moments, insisting that he would pay every bill, that money didn't matter, that she was what mattered. The last letter from Jennifer was dated the 15th of March 1987. "James, you've already given up too much. The pottery studio, your art, your dreams. You've become someone you never wanted to be, all to pay my medical bills. Please, I'm begging you, after I'm gone, don't forget who you really were. The James I fell in love with made beautiful things with his hands. That's who you are. Not this real estate tycoon you've forced yourself to become. Promise me you'll remember. The death certificate was in the next folder. Jennifer Hoffman, the 23rd of March 1987, age 32. I sat down on the dusty floor, my hands shaking, pieces of my father's life spreading out around me. He had been an artist, a potter. He had loved someone deeply enough to give up everything he cared about to try to save her. And when he couldn't save her, he had kept going anyway, building an empire out of obligation and grief, burying the person he used to be so deep that even his own sons never knew he existed. The wooden trunk was harder to open. The lock was old and stiff. But when I finally got it undone and lifted the lid, I had to catch my breath. Inside were dozens of pieces of pottery. Bowls and vases and plates and mugs, each one handmade, each one beautiful. The same deep blue glaze, the same careful craftsmanship. And underneath them, wrapped in cloth, were more documents, property deeds, not for buildings or apartment complexes, but for land. 53 acres in Door County, Wisconsin, on the shore of Lake Michigan, purchased in 1985, before Jennifer got sick. There was a letter with the deed, dated just 3 months before my father died. It was addressed to me, Logan, it began, and just seeing my name in his handwriting made my throat tight. If you're reading this, then you found what I left for you. I'm sorry I couldn't give this to you in person. I'm sorry for a lot of things. Your brothers are like me, or at least like the man I became after Jennifer died. They understand money and property and building empires. They'll do well with what I've left them. They'll turn millions into more millions. That's their gift. But you, Logan, you're like the man I used to be, the one I buried, the one who cared about beauty and meaning, and creating something with your own hands. I saw it in you from the time you were small, and I didn't know what to do with it. I was afraid you'd end up like I almost did, poor and desperate and watching someone you love die because you can't afford to save them. So I pushed you away. I made you feel like you weren't enough. I made you feel like your dreams were worthless. And I was wrong. The land in Door County was supposed to be for Jennifer and me. We were going to build a pottery studio there, live simply, make beautiful things. When she died, I couldn't bear to sell it. I kept paying the taxes on it every year, telling myself someday I'd go back. I never did. It's yours now, all of it. The land is worth about $3.5 million if you sell it. Or you can do what Jennifer and I never got to do. You can build something there, whatever you want. A house, a studio, a life that means something to you. The mug I left you was the last piece I ever made. April 1987, 1 month after Jennifer died. I couldn't make myself throw clay after that. It hurt too much, but I kept this one mug, and I used it every morning for 37 years. It reminded me of who I was, of what I gave up, of what mattered. I'm leaving it to you because you're the only one of my sons who might understand. You're the only one who might choose meaning over money. You're the only one I trust to remember that beauty matters, that art matters, that how you live your life matters more than how much money you make. Your brothers got my empire, you got my heart. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you this when I was alive. I'm sorry I was too much of a coward. I hope you can forgive me. And I hope you use the land, Logan. I hope you build something beautiful. Love, Dad. I sat there in that storage unit for over an hour, reading the letter again and again, looking through the photographs, holding the pottery my father had made with his own hands nearly 40 years ago. I thought about all the times he'd criticized my choice to teach, to pursue literature, to care about things that didn't make money, and I realized he hadn't been criticizing me at all. He'd been afraid for me, afraid I'd go through what he went through, afraid I'd have to choose between my dreams and someone's survival. But he'd also given me something Marcus and Tyler would never have. A choice. Money enough to be secure, but also permission to care about more than money. The land he and Jennifer had dreamed of, waiting for me to decide what it should become. I loaded the trunk and the filing cabinet into my car, made arrangements to close out the storage unit, and drove home in a daze. The coordinates on the mug had led me to a warehouse. The warehouse had led me to my father's hidden history, and his history had led me to an inheritance worth more than real estate or stock portfolios. When I got home, I called Marcus. "What do you want?" he answered, his voice impatient. I'm in the middle of meeting with the property managers. Dad left me something else, I said. I need to tell you about it. There was a pause. Then, what are you talking about? The mug had coordinates on it. They led me to a storage unit. There's land. In Wisconsin, it's worth about $3.5 million. The silence stretched out for a long moment. Then Marcus laughed, but it sounded forced. You're joking. I'm not. And there's more. Letters, photos, property deeds. Dad had a whole other life before we were born. He was an artist, a potter. He gave it all up when someone he loved got sick. That's insane, Marcus said, but his voice had lost its confidence. Why would he hide that from us? Why would he give that to you and not mention it in the will? Because you and Tyler wouldn't have understood, I said. And I didn't say it meanly. It was just the truth. He knew you'd sell the land immediately. He wanted someone to actually use it, to build something there. So what? Tyler's voice came through the speaker. Marcus must have put me on conference. You're going to quit teaching and become a hermit in Wisconsin. This is ridiculous. That land should be part of the estate. It should be divided equally. It's not in the estate, I said. He put it in a trust decades ago. It was never part of the will. He kept it separate specifically so it would come to me. I could hear them conferring on the other end, their voices low and angry. Finally, Marcus came back on. We're going to contest this. Contest what? He left you $7 million in real estate and investments. He left me one piece of land with sentimental value. How exactly are you going to argue that's unfair? Because he hid it. Because he manipulated the situation to give you more. He gave you the empire he built, I said quietly. He gave me the dream he gave up. Those aren't the same thing, and they weren't meant to be. I hung up before they could respond. Over the next 6 weeks, Marcus and Tyler did exactly what I knew they would. They hired lawyers. They demanded to see all the documents from the storage unit. They tried to argue that my father wasn't mentally competent when he set up the trust, even though it had been established in 1985, 40 years ago. Mr. Richardson handled it all with the kind of calm efficiency that made me understand why my father had trusted him for 3 decades. Every attempt my brothers made to contest the trust failed. The law was clear. The land was mine. My father had made absolutely certain of that. But the fight took its toll. Thanksgiving came and went without any contact from Marcus or Tyler. So did Christmas. By New Year's, I realized I might never have a relationship with my brothers again. And strangely, I found I could live with that. In January, I drove up to Door County for the first time. The land was covered in snow, but I could see the bones of it. 53 acres of forest and meadow, with a 1/4 mile of shoreline on Lake Michigan. It was stunningly beautiful. Lotto, and the meadow, the kind of place that made your chest ache just looking at it. I stood on the frozen beach, the wind coming off the lake so cold it burned. And I understood why my father and Jennifer had chosen this place. It was quiet, peaceful, far enough from the city to feel like a different world. I thought about what my father had written. Build something beautiful. I could sell it, take the $3.5 million, and never worry about money again. I could build a mansion, live like my brothers lived, prove I was just as successful as they were. Or I could do what my father never got to do. By spring, I'd made my decision. I used a portion of the money from selling some of the pottery pieces collectors, paid stunning amounts for my father's early work to hire architects and contractors. Not for a mansion, for something else. I built a pottery studio, a real one, professional grade, with multiple wheels and kilns and space for classes. And next to it, a small house. Simple, beautiful, with big windows looking out at the lake. I didn't quit teaching, not right away, but I started spending my weekends and summers in Door County. I taught myself pottery, using my father's old pieces as guides. I wasn't very good at first. My bowls were lopsided, my mugs leaked, but slowly I improved, and I started teaching classes, just a few at first. Local people, tourists, anyone who wanted to learn. I charged almost nothing. It wasn't about the money. In August, I got an unexpected email. It was from a woman named Sarah Hoffman. I don't know if you remember me, it began. We met very briefly at your father's funeral. I'm Jennifer Hoffman's niece. My aunt passed away before I was born, but my mother told me stories about her and your father. She said they were soulmates. She said your father gave up everything to try to save her. I saw an article about the pottery studio you opened, about how you're teaching classes there, and I wanted to tell you something. My aunt kept a journal. In the last entry, 3 days before she died, she wrote, "I hope James finds a way back to who he was. I hope he makes beautiful things again, and if he doesn't, I hope one of his children does. I hope the art doesn't die with us." I think she'd be really happy to know what you're doing. I think she'd be proud. I read that email 5 times, sitting on the porch of my little house, watching the sun set over Lake Michigan. And for the first time since my father died, I cried. Not because I was sad, because I understood. My father had spent 37 years building an empire he never wanted, making money he didn't care about, becoming someone he wasn't, all because he'd loved someone enough to give up everything for her. And in the end, he'd given me the gift of not having to make that choice. He'd given me security and permission, safety and dreams. He'd given me the mug to remember who he really was. And he'd given me the land to become who I really was. Marcus and Tyler never came to visit the studio. I sent them photos once, of the finished building, of the pottery I was making, of the classes full of people learning to create something with their own hands. They didn't respond, but about 6 months after I opened, I got a package in the mail. Inside was a check from Marcus for $50,000 and a short note. For the studio, Dad would have wanted you to have good equipment. I still think he played favorites. But maybe he knew what he was doing. It wasn't much. It wasn't an apology or a reconciliation, but it was something. I used the money to buy a new kiln and more wheels, and I made a mug, as close to my father's style as I could manage, and I sent it to Marcus with a note of my own. "Thanks. This was the last one Dad made. I thought you should have it. The one he left me is on my shelf here, holding pencils. I use it every day. L." A week later, Marcus sent a single-line email. "Got the mug. It's actually pretty good. Mom wants to visit the studio in spring." And that was how healing began. Not with grand gestures or tearful apologies, but with small acts of understanding, with pottery and permission and the recognition that my father had left each of us exactly what we needed, even if we didn't understand it at first. I'm sitting on my porch now, 3 years later, watching students through the studio windows. They're bent over their wheels, hands covered in clay, learning to shape something beautiful out of formless mud. The sun is setting over the lake, painting everything gold and red. Next to me is the mug my father made 40 years ago. It's chipped now, worn from use, but I've never loved an object more. Because it's not just a mug. It's a message, a promise, a reminder that who you are matters more than what you own. That love is worth more than money. That beauty and meaning, and creating something with your own hands, that's the real inheritance. My brothers got houses and cash and investment portfolios worth $7 million. They're doing well, building their empire just like my father taught them. I got a coffee mug with coordinates scratched into the bottom, and it led me to everything that mattered. They got his empire, I got his heart, and I wouldn't trade for anything in the world.